Let's check in on both campaigns. Our correspondents covering Bush and Gore, Campbell Brown, Chip Reed. Campbell Brown, we'll begin with you in Austin, Texas.
Well, Brian, as you can imagine, it's very tense here right now. There's a huge crowd behind me, but they are nowhere close to celebrating. Minnesota does not help things at all because the scenario they have been spinning the last couple of hours was they could still pull this off even if they lost Florida, even if they lost Michigan, even if they lost Pennsylvania. But part of that scenario is picking up all of these other traditionally Democratic states, among them Minnesota. The other states, as Lawrence O'Donnell went through, Tennessee, Arkansas, West Virginia, Wisconsin, Oregon, Washington, and Missouri. This makes it a whole lot harder, as you just said. Governor Bush earlier tonight was at a hotel about 10 blocks from here. He was having dinner with his family, including the governor of Florida, Jeb Bush. They were supposed to stay down there, Brian, and watch the returns come in, and then the decision was made around dinner time for the governor and Mrs. Bush, just the two of them, to return to the mansion, which is just about a block from where we are, and watch the returns there. Aides are saying not to read too much into it, that they felt it would be more relaxing for him to be at the mansion. It's obviously a more stressful night than they had hoped to have, but he also has to work on his remarks because the plan was once this race had been called, and they were hoping to know by about 10 p.m. Central Time, 11 p.m. Eastern Time, to have the governor then come here to where we are in front of the state capitol and make his address to the country and to his supporters here. I don't know if that's going to happen, frankly.
Campbell?
Because as clearly we may not have a final answer by then. Yes, Brian?
While you've been speaking, we have just given the state of Tennessee, home state of Al Gore, where his father, of course, was a United States Senator, to George W. Bush, along with its 11 electoral votes. And so this back and forth pattern this evening continues. The Bush campaign wanted Tennessee badly. The Gore campaign wanted Tennessee just as badly. 193, 185, a surprising and strong showing by Al Gore tonight on his way, so the campaign hopes, to 270. And Campbell Brown, I cut you off. Continue, and then we have to check in with Chip Reed over at Gore headquarters.
Well, I think Tennessee is obviously great news. They're going to be thrilled about that. That was one of the last stops on the campaign trail, his final day out on the road. They went to Tennessee in part to needle Vice President Gore, but in part to make a real pitch for it. And this is something they're going to be very pleased about. But again, the scenario is very unclear, and it's fairly tense here. It looks like we're going to have a delay in terms of getting the governor out here and speaking to this crowd, because it doesn't look like, based on the numbers we've seen, we're going to know for sure by 10 p.m. Central Time, 11 Eastern.
All right, Campbell Brown, thanks. And over to Chip Reed. Chip, that optimism, the quiet optimism you mentioned earlier, I imagine it's still around.
Yeah, Brian, I would say for many of the Gore people, the party has begun. I talked to one Gore aide a short time ago as he passed by here. I said, "What's the mood?" He said, "Fantastic." They believe they are on their way to victory here. They had said all along that if they won Florida, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and then a smattering of the battleground states, they didn't even need a majority of the smaller battleground states after that. They had said that that would propel them to victory, and they believe that's where they're headed. And this crowd behind me had been out in the street for quite a while, and I believe they had a big screen projector, or maybe people had little portable TVs, but about every 5 minutes you'd hear them scream jubilantly when some kind of result came in. And when they filed in here, it was very clear that they came in here believing that they are here for a victory celebration. And one other thing, Brian, for the last few weeks on the campaign bus and the campaign plane, one of the big topics of conversation has been that whole question of whether or not Gore could win the Electoral College vote and Bush would win the majority vote. And I'll tell you, there were a lot of people in the press corps who thought that that was a real distinct possibility, if not a likelihood, that that is the way it was going to go. And at this point, it really looks like it could end up going that way. And in fact, even some of the Gore campaign officials privately would admit that. They did not want to come out and say that that was a possibility because they didn't want to look like they were strategizing that way, because it almost looks anti-democratic. So they would talk to you on background, not even on background, off the record about it, but they didn't really want to make it look like that was their strategy. But One Gore official, for example, whenever he saw me, would say, "Constitutional crisis." That was the title of the MSNBC show that he was proposing if there is a difference in the Electoral College vote and the majority vote. Brian?
Well, at this point, they're ready to greenlight it as a mini-series.